don't get, dude. I was watching the game, and we'll talk about this, here in a little bit after we do the drop. But I was watching the game. You were listening to the game. It's just like to have basketball back. It's like it gets me so goddamn excited. So, what are you drinking tonight, my friend?
I got the old Samuel Adams Oktoberfest.
Nice.
Not a big fan, but it's all I have right now.
Dude, that's a good call.
I just wanted to pop one open.
Hell yeah! So here's what I got. I got a brick by brick India Pale Ale. This is from Brick West Brewing Company, which is a local brewing company here in Spokane, Washington. So when I landed today and I stopped by the local, what was it? I think it's a Unical 76. I went looking through the beer aisle. I'm like, I got to find a local beer to talk about on the pod. And on the side, it says the taste profile is a true West Coast style IPA. Huge fruity aromatics from Amarillo. Simcoe and Citra hops are carried by a soft malt presence and smooth bitterness, bold yet balanced, just like the Phoenix Suns. So let's pop them open if you got them, Suns fans. Crisp.
Oh man, I miss again. You think in the off season I would work on something, but it wasn't cracking open a beer, so I apologize.
No worries. Let's talk about this first preseason game for your Phoenix Suns. So yeah, it's the preseason. So, obviously the end total probably doesn't necessarily matter, but the Suns do lose their first preseason game, much akin to last year. They lose it to the Sacramento Kings in Sacramento by a score of 117 to 106. But you know what? I guess the first thing that I got to do is, the Matthew I got to ask segment.
Matthew, I got to ask.
So, Matthew, I just got to ask, what was it like listening to this game on the radio?
You know what? I'm actually a big fan. I did this a lot last year, too, when they would play the earlier games, and I would have to drive home. East Coast games they would play, it starts at 4:30. Driving home, listen to it. Very descriptive. John Bloom does an excellent job.
Yes.
Tim Kempton, very descriptive, very fast. You feel like you're there. You feel like you're actually watching it until you see a highlight. I'm like, oh, that actually looked a little bit different. But I enjoy it. I'm only going to do it for the preseason probably, unless these things are actually aired. But this season, I'm just excited to actually watch some ball. So it'll do for now, but I can move on from it.
Well, what was interesting for me is, again, I'm outside of the greater Phoenix region, and now I can really understand and empathize what a lot of our fellow Jamsters go through, because we have a great number of listeners and watchers of our show who are outside of Phoenix. They're all over the world, from Australia to Brazil to Malaysia to all over the United States. And today I truly felt like I felt what it was like when you're not in the greater Phoenix area to try to consume Phoenix Suns content, because I have the 98.7 Arizona sports application on my phone, so I can listen to the radio version. And unfortunately, I was geo-blocked. And I'm like, what? Like geo-blocked? Like I can't listen to the radio even though I'm out of state? And I mean, I went through TuneIn, I went through iHeartRadio, I went through every application possible in an effort to try to consume this game, because I'm excited. I'm just like the rest of the Suns fans. Like, yeah, this game doesn't count. It's like the Orlando bubble. Doesn't matter whatsoever. Still going to talk about some things that I saw, but thank God for illegally streaming games, because that's essentially what I did. And I really got to tell you, I feel like a nerd because I'm sitting in my hotel room streaming and watching an entire preseason game. But I love this team, and it was really excited. I was really excited to actually see it. And so essentially what it was is I got to see the game, and it was kind of, one, it was the announcers for the Kings, and two, it was the in-stadium video stream. So like I got to see all the stuff that they do in between timeouts and things of that nature. But I did have an opportunity to consume this game. So I definitely have a lot of things that I want to talk about. But I guess another question I have for you, Matthew, I got to ask, what word comes to mind when you think about this team?
I don't know. That's what I think of. IDK. That's what
IDK.
I think about.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Actually, That's funny you asked, because I actually did think of something when I was listening to them. I was thinking of just maybe fun. Maybe that's one word, is fun, because they sound like a very aggressive team. I know they're getting blown out, but who cares about the score? The focus is not on defense, really just getting that offense, involved, the new guys. But they sounded like, the alley-oops were going up. They were playing aggressive. The point guards getting used to DA in the first quarter. You had Alfred Payton. And
Mhm.
I think these guys, knowing how last year went down and the additions we got coming in there, they are having fun. And like we even heard, like someone said, what was it, a college atmosphere? I think it was Shamet that said that. It's like a college atmosphere when he came here, but they're
Mhm.
winning. So you have fun, you win, and you do your job. This team right now is just, I think they're finding their way, of course, because it's preseason, but they sound like they're kind of, I'm going to say sound like a lot because I was listening to it. They
Yeah.
sounded like they were kind of getting in sync a little bit. Defense sucked, but the offense was in sync.
The word that comes to mind for me is athletic. That's what I noticed in watching the Suns play this evening. And you're right, defense wasn't really the focus. The final score wasn't really the focus. At one point, before halftime, the Sacramento Kings had shot like 27 threes, and the Suns had shot 6. So, I mean, there's different focuses for each team when they come into these matchups, because that's what they want to focus on moving forward, or it's an opportunity to create some reps or develop some semblance of what they want to do when the regular season starts. And I think that the focus for the Phoenix Suns was practice attacking the rim. You have Landry Shamet, Abdel Nader, Jalen Smith. A lot of these guys were attacking the rim, and they had opportunities to take threes, but they were taking those opportunities instead of just jacking up shots like the Kings were all night. They were just taking it to the rim and trying different things relative to that approach. And I think it was something that, obviously, as somebody who talked about it constantly throughout the last season, it was nice to see. It's like, oh, okay, the focus is there. They have noticed that last season they were one of the worst teams in the NBA
Yeah.
when it came to just shooting total number of free throws and drawing fouls. So that's what I noticed. And then to your point, they are fun because they're athletic. And we know that Chris Paul isn't somebody who you would necessarily define as athletic. And when he's in the game, he will play with a slower pace and a more methodical approach. But knowing that you have the Landry Shamets of the world, they have Abdel Nader, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, all of these guys, even JaVale McGee, they're doing things that are athletic, that can push the pace, and it adds another layer of Phoenix Suns basketball and another way that you can, essentially that they can beat you. And that's what's going to make this team really, to your word, fun, is the way that they can beat you in so many different types of basketball. It's not half court offense. It's not just teams that live on the fast break. They can do it so many different ways. Obviously tonight they weren't trying to win with defense, and they let the Kings kind of do what they wanted outside of the arc. But it was really just, it was interesting because you look at the starting lineup tonight: Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, DeAndre Ayton. Now, I know you, Matthew, you're going to be riding that Cam Johnson train all season long, but did you get a little excited when you saw Cam Johnson was in the starting lineup?
Oh, yeah, the starting 4 position. All right. Well, Jay Crowder, no one even mentioned, did anyone mention like he wasn't playing? I mean, I know he didn't play, but like no one even said like, hey, he's not playing. I know it's Booker and Chris
Booker,
Paul are
yeah.
out, but then Jay Crowder's like, oh, is he not on the team anymore? What's going on? Unless I just totally missed it. But I was listening to the broadcast the whole time. And yeah, Cam Johnson kind of getting warmed up, sitting on that seat where he's going to be the starting power forward for the Suns coming soon. And it's going to happen. The thing I was really watching with him or listening to, whatever, it was how his size going up against Bagley. Because Bagley, all of a sudden, he's back. I forgot he was still in the league, but he was playing. But he's like a 7 foot, 6'11" center power forward guy. It's like, how is Cam Johnson going to like really fend for himself against him? It didn't sound like it was too promising early. He had the foul. It seemed like Rashawn Holmes was having his way. Of course, I'm not watching the spacing and anything like that, but that's one thing I really want to look forward to and look in early in the season, this preseason, if he plays again in the preseason, because I'm thinking, I don't know if these guys are going to play again, just let the other guys play, the newer guys, the 12th man, those kind of guys. So Cam Johnson, though, I'm going to go into early in the season to see how he fares against these big guys, because that is going to be very, very interesting, because I know DeAndre Ayton has his help behind him now. We saw McGee, how he had a hell of a game, right? I mean, he was the alley-oops, the blocks, it was
Mhm.
all there, things that we really want to see from a backup center. But it's also like, can Cam Johnson, if he does fill that role as a power forward, can he help DA down there? It didn't sound like he did too well defensively, but offensively, he got the threes to go down. And I know you got a highlight coming up with him and McGee
Well, I
because
mean,
he's a hustler.
should we talk about Cameron Johnson? I mean, we already are, but I mean, should we
Let's do it.
introduce
Yeah,
a new
of course.
segment?
Yeah, Gamsters, are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's do it. New segment time.
Lights, Cameron, action.
All right,
Beautiful.
lights, Cameron, action. Shout out to one of our Jamsters on Twitter at Scott Lacey for making that little video. If you are listening, then you got to hear what it had to say. But yeah, lights, Cameron, action. I mean, looking at the way he played, and shout out to Khalid who's watching along live in the chat. He said Cam Johnson didn't look like himself tonight. And I like that he didn't look like himself. He looked like somebody who's trying some different things. He wasn't just loading up and shooting. You look overall on how he played, and he went 2 for 3 from downtown, which is great, but he went 4 for 6 overall. So half of his shots came on the interior, half of them came from the outside. He did have the 4 personal fouls, so that's why he didn't really feel like somebody who was necessarily making an impact on defense. And if he was making an impact, it happened to do with the foul. But I mean, 2 steals, 1 block, 11 points for Cam Johnson in a preseason game. And what I'm actually going to do right here is I'm going to play a little highlight of probably my favorite play of the game. And this is where I actually got up in my hotel room and was like, oh, damn. You see he has this little bounce pass to Cameron Johnson. He takes it up for a layup. It's an and one because he gets fouled by Alex Len. Now, what was very impressive, yeah, good old Alex Len. He sure filled out, didn't he? What was very interesting about that play, though, was the play started off with JaVale McGee essentially on the block, and Cameron Johnson passed the ball down to him, and he was about 17 feet from the basket, and then Cameron Johnson ran around the left side of McGee, using him as a pick in an effort to try to just get a dump off pass in the key so he could just do a layup. And the defender was right there. So what he did is he stopped in the key, and then he came back around McGee. McGee did a fake handoff to him. He continued around his right side, and then he bounced past to that layup, which led to an and one. And that is what I was talking about, and what we've been waiting to see kind of all offseason is those little opportunities for Cameron Johnson to just be more involved, to do more than just stand on the outside, catch a screen to get an open three. He initiated the offense by passing it down to McGee, tried to get open, it was a Devin Booker play. It's exactly what it was. It was a Devin Booker play, and it just looked absolutely beautiful. And of course, once it happened, I thought of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel like you do anytime Cam Johnson is on there with his undershirt. I think that he has the opportunity to really learn a lot this preseason if he plays more, just by like trying to do some. The only thing that is weird is he's not going to be playing with Devin Booker, Chris Paul. I don't think they're going to be playing this preseason at all. So that is mainly the vocal point. But Cameron Johnson will start the season as a backup. So he's in there right now with the backup guys. And I think him moving around, I think they were talking about Mikal Bridges really being like the third option. I think Zona Sports, Brandon actually wrote something about how Monty wants him to be the third option. All right. So that was really quick, because I remember last year we kind of talked about that. Like, he needs more opportunities offensively. Mm-hmm. So if Mikal Bridges fills that role as making like a third or fourth option, he could be a third option. He might be that improved this year. Just a little bit of an improvement to get him over the hump to be that third option. Then Cameron Johnson fills the role. Like, okay, well, then what can you do? Then you start watching him working on things like cutting to the basket. He can shoot the three, that spacing. If people are rushing up on him, the pump fake. We wanted Mikal Bridges to do that. Mikal Bridges then started to do that later in the season and get to the rim. He kept doing it more and more and more. That is something I'm sure Cam Johnson can't wait to get going, because honestly, that's something that he's bigger than Mikal Bridges. Mm-hmm. If he gets in there, he needs to learn how to draw the fouls and just to get to the rim, and something good will happen. And that is something the Suns kind of lacked last year. But I'm so impressed that Mikal Bridges improved so much to where it's almost like we're looking at him as like an offensive threat, kind of, in a way, going into this season. And now it's Cameron Johnson's. Yeah, we hope. I mean, he's not going to be like an all-star. I'm just saying, when you're surrounded by like Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Ayton, who's going to guard Mikal Bridges. So as long as those two are working on what they're working on to improve themselves in this offense, it's going to be endless. And I think they can continue to do it throughout the season, like from the start to the end. They'll improve and they'll keep working on their stuff.
Well, and again with Cam, I think that there's much more opportunity within the confines of this offense because of what he displayed last season and the growth that he's going to continue to display this year, because he is an offensive player. And what made that highlight that I showed so impressive was, to your point, because of his size, because of his ability to move bodies down on the block, he can finish through contact. And that's something that Mikal Bridges doesn't necessarily possess, but Cameron Johnson does. So it'll be interesting again as the preseason progresses and eventually we start the regular season, is to see how much we see Cam involved, like how many plays are drawn up, because that was a clear drawn up little, high screen handoff opportunity. JaVale McGee read it absolutely correctly and got the perfect pass to Cam Johnson. Those are the advantages of having players like JaVale on the second team who know how to do that versus Frank, who's just like, from a spacing standpoint, doesn't know where the hell he's at sometimes. Changing gears a little bit, continue to talk about JaVale. He was doing things tonight. And again, I know it's just preseason, but I watch basketball and I know what I see. He was doing things tonight that I haven't seen a backup center do for Phoenix in a long time. He was taking the ball to the rim instinctively. It didn't feel like I was watching him think. Like with Aaron Baines a couple years ago, with Frank Kaminsky, when we had Damian Jones, all these backup bigs, you could feel them thinking. Like they get the ball on the block and they'd stand there and then they'd assess and then they'd start to move. Whereas JaVale was a lot more fluid. Now, I'm not saying every time he had the ball down the block and he made an attempt, it was the right move, because sometimes he'd get it and he kind of knew what he wanted to do, and whether there was a defender there or not, he was going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was blocked a couple times in an effort trying to do so, but still very decisive, somebody who fits that 0.5 mantra that Monty Williams likes, instead of getting the ball and just thinking and okay, now I'm going to go here. And by that time, either a defender's dropped down or you've telegraphed what you're going to do to your defender, and it always ends in a disaster. JaVale looked very, very good tonight. He ends with the total coming off of the bench. He ends with a total of 10 points on 5 of 6 shooting. He had a couple rebounds on block. I was very impressed by seeing a backup center who was actually competent tonight.
No, I know. The thing is with him, he's been there, he's done that, right? He's won championships, he knows what to do. The 0.5 offense is so perfect for him because he's played with so many players, different teams. He's used to the movement, I think. And even if he's playing with new players, he knows where they should be. And a lot of the guys right now on the Suns team, they're veterans in a way to where they know where to be too. So they click that way. So yeah, been there, done that. But also it's not like we'll have these games where it's going to look really great for McGee, and then we'll have the games where it's not. But that we don't need it every night. We just need something that's going to back up DA on maybe DA's off night. But then the thing is like, if you're looking at DA's off nights, you're like hoping McGee can get something going. I wouldn't hope for that. And I wouldn't wish for the Suns to lean on that. I just think that when DA needs a rest, we have that competent guy, like you said, to come in. It's not going to be every night, but he's going to give us something. And that is just huge for DA. That is huge for the Suns. And honestly, just even like listening to it, I'm like, this is kind of crazy, because every guy that's coming in the game, the strengths for all of them is just the improvement that Monty Williams and James Jones did with this roster. Even though they're not sexy names, it is just enough to make us smile even more, knowing that we got more going to next season to really kind of counter what we were kind of bad at last year.
Well, exactly. I mean, James Jones has done a fantastic job, and that's why the Suns are, in the eyes of the nation, really a team to reckon with. Now, obviously, they aren't the Nets and they aren't, the Lakers in air quotes per the national media, but we're so deep. We have experience and we have that organic chemistry. So when you see the way that they're playing tonight, like you said, I asked you, what is the one word to describe the Suns tonight? And you said fun. That's what they're out there doing. They're just playing ball, having fun. They know it's preseason. They're not going to take it too seriously. I haven't seen, obviously, the Monty Williams post-game press conference because we're here doing this right now. But I'm sure he's going to just echo that, we're just here to work on some things and, come together as a team and integrate the new guys into our system. And I think that although it's a loss, it doesn't matter. It's a fun team to watch. I mean, Landry Shamet looked nice tonight, man. He's going to fit in just fine here. He had this nice little fast break behind the back, layup and one play that I was just like, oh man, that was smooth. He ends the night with a total of 13 points on 5 of 11 shooting, 3 assists, couple steals. And he looks like somebody who's just gonna, just like JaVale. It's just like plug and play, man. Like, it's not sitting there at the back end of the bench. Your 13th, 14th, and 15th players. You're like, man, break in case of emergency. It's like, no, these guys are all just quality players. And it's a preseason game, but it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and he seems like a guy. Sounded like he was really trying to get the team involved. I know he went to DA early. DA dropped it, and I'm like, what was DA doing? Partying? I'm just joking. Partying all off season. I'm just joking, dude. But yeah, he dropped the pass. But it sounded like as soon as Shamet was on the floor, he wanted to get the team involved. And one thing that I heard is like the stop and go. Okay, I couldn't really see it, and I'll admit I haven't really watched Shamet that much prior to the season. Then you watch highlights and all that. But the stop and go speed that he has, that I heard John Bloom talk about, that is something that's kind of underrated. But whenever you see it, it's like, oh man, he has that. Like, a lot of players don't have that coming to the league. Then they have to work on it in the offseason. They have to get that going. Either they're too fast, I don't know, a lot of them are too slow, but they're too fast and they can't control it. So if he has that and he's looking around and he can shoot the ball and he's looking around to get his teammates involved, that's something that, we're going to forget about who was there before with Javon Carter and Langston Galloway, maybe. You know what I mean?
Each one more. Yeah, it's just
a stallion coming off the bench. It's someone, again, and it is just preseason, but listening to this game, I didn't even think the Suns were down by 20 like they were. I'm like, it sounded like they were getting some stuff going on offense.
Yeah, they were. It's just that the Kings were just chucking up threes, so they were hitting them, so it just kind of kept expanding it. Right? Daniel Thompson in the chat says the Cam Johnson and Landry Shamet duo off the bench is lethal, and that's goddamn right.
Keep him on the bench. Keep Cam on the bench.
Yeah, I like Cam on the bench though. I really do. I think it's going to allow him. He'll get his minutes. It's not who you start with; it's who you finish with. It's who gets the more minutes kind of throughout the game. But I mean, this team is going to be really, really lethal. With Landry Shamet backing up Devin Booker, and Cam Johnson backing up Jay Crowder, and JaVale McGee backing up DA, and Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton only played 12 minutes tonight, and I like that. They played kind of a little bit in the first half.
The whole first quarter they played.
Yeah, they played the whole first quarter, and then boom, that was it. They were out for the game. So it was nice to see that. But you had an opportunity to take a look at some of the other guys. And, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the other guys on the team. But before I do that, I want to make this little drop that we'll just throw in here just to remind everybody.
Suns Jam Session Podcast is brought to you by Just Sports. Enter the code SUNSJAM at checkout for any of your online orders and receive 15% off of your purchase. That's right. Let them know that the Suns Jam Session guy sent you. Again, that is promo code SUNSJAM when checking out at shopjustsports.com.
Can we talk a little bit about the Kings? Is that cool?
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, they have a lot to talk about.
Well, I wanted to, obviously watching the Suns play the Kings tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about them. They added in free agency Alex Len, who's playing it with his second stint with them. They got Tristan Thompson from Boston in a trade, and then they drafted Davion Mitchell. And you saw those guys pretty heavily featured in this game tonight. And, my observation of the Kings is, the first thing I wrote down is Kings have the offense, and they will be a team that will score points this season. I just think that in the long run, their defense is ultimately not going to be something to write home about. That's why they'll probably be a team that's, going to be fighting for that last play-in spot if possible. Do you agree?
Yeah, and it sucks because I'm a big fan of Bagley, and whatever they have going on in Sacramento is terrible. And who knows, they might be the landing spot for Ben Simmons one day.
Yeah,
it might happen. But right now, what they have is I love Rashawn Holmes, I really do, but I don't think he's a starting center. Right? He's a guy not like McGee, but he's a guy that's not going to hit every night, a guy that you can count on. So Bagley, I feel like, has a lot of pressure on him, and it just doesn't sound like early he had it going. I know it's the first game, but later on, he got more comfortable with like the bench coming in for the Suns. So that's kind of going to be an issue with them. They do have point guards, so they might be gone. Who knows? But whenever they have All three of those guys are Buddy Hield, Halliburton, and Fox on the floor, and then you got Bagley. It looks good on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really does, but how it connects and how that franchise is run, it's weird. And I was thinking really quick about Bagley. It is strange because they fired their GM after the draft, after they passed on Doncic. But can you just imagine being Bagley coming to that franchise, and then it's just like, hey, you got to do good, man. Like they're all greeting them with a big smile, like, hey, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. Luka blows up, Bagley gets hurt, all this stuff happens. It's like, how do you recover from that when you're Bagley? I know it's like, oh, this guy sucks, he's a bust, but that must be tough to know that like the Sacramento fans probably wanted Luka, but then you're there and it's just not working out. So I can see why he's kind of trying to make his way out of there.
Yeah, well, it's more of his dad. His dad's trying to make his way out of there for him, whether that's coming from personal conversations that Bagley's having with his father or not. I think you're right. Bagley is the guy in the draft when you look back 10 years from now, if he doesn't right the ship, that everybody's going to talk about as being the Sam Bowie of that draft in 2018 with all-stars, all NBA people all around him. All these guys are getting max contracts right now. And then you got Bagley who's just trying to stay healthy and on the floor. That's what's so sad about it, because Marvin Bagley is a damn good player. He just can't stay healthy. And it's the dumb injuries. It's like, it's his ring finger or some shit. It's like he sprained a wrist, so it's not like he like blew his knee out and he's trying to come back from that. But it's unfortunate that his career has taken the path that it has. But at the same time, you look at that overall lineup, and D. Leon says it in the chat. He says Davion Mitchell looks like a nightmare on defense. And it's a young kid out of Baylor, so I'm not going to put too much stock in a preseason game, but that is kind of the knock on those guards in Sacramento. You have De'Aaron Fox. Halliburton can play some defense because he's long, but then you go and you draft Davion Mitchell, another guard. It's like, I don't know. Again, on paper, it kind of makes sense. They have Rashawn Holmes at center. You have Marvin Bagley. You have Harrison Barnes, who Harrison Barnes is a guy who,
oh god, yeah.
dude, he's an interesting story. Like he's part of that championship Golden State Warriors team. And then he signs as a free agent in Dallas, making $23 million a year. He's there for 2 years. The year that Luka Doncic is drafted, they trade him to Sacramento for Justin Johnson and Zach Randolph. And essentially what they're doing is they're trying to clear space and contracts so they can bring in Kristaps Porzingis. And then in 2019, he signs a 4-year, $85 million contract. And what's interesting is he hasn't been traded as they try to develop their roster. Every year his name kind of comes up as one of those guys who has a contract. It's $23 million a year, so it's kind of hefty, but like he could have an opportunity to move on, or they could utilize his contract as an opportunity to move on and better their team. But, there he is just starting at small forward. Daniel says in the chat, he's like, Harrison Barnes always torches the Suns, which is correct. And he was doing it again tonight, but it's an interesting franchise and how it's built. It's, so what they did in the offseason is they fortified the center position. They definitely have the guards. They fortified the center position. So behind Rashawn Holmes, now you have Alex Len and Tristan Thompson to add veteran presence. And again, I've always been, the Kings are kind of were our kindred spirit for a long, long time. This past decade, we were drafting right next to them the entire season, or the entire offseason. Them and like the Grizzlies. It was always just like us at the bottom, of the lottery. And I feel for them and I feel for Kings fans, but at the same time, I just I've never truly understood the vision. And that's what's been nice with James Jones hiring Monty Williams, is there's been a vision and a culture that's been instilled and uploaded to this team and this franchise, or at least you can look at the piece of paper and whereas you look at the Kings on paper and you're like, okay, that looks like it makes sense, but why doesn't it? And you look at the Suns on paper and you're like, this makes sense, and it comes to fruition on the court.
Yeah, now it does, but it's like, who do they have on their team that you can kind of match with like Booker? The way the Suns grew up in the last 4 years, you have Booker, the intense guy that's just ready to get down every day to play and to make his team better. Eventually he got that way with making his team better. Of course, himself, he was in the gym every day, whatever. But
they wanted that to be Buddy Hield.
Exactly, and I don't think that's the guy, but
they
maybe
still
De'Aaron
have him,
Fox.
which is interesting. Yeah, but De'Aaron Fox, again, he's a guy who's got a great work ethic. He's unbelievably fast. Like watching him again tonight, like he's probably the fastest guy in the NBA. Shot 3 for 12 tonight, had a total of 6 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. But he's just, again, I don't think that he has the scoring capability consistently to do it. And you don't need him to, because he's your point guard. He should be your primary distributor. And maybe with Halliburton, they want him to play a little, essentially they got 2 point guards out there and no shooting guards. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there has to be some kind of mix up coming, but even with Fox, it's like a lot of people gave up on him last year. I mean, the organization, you have to look at that, right? With these players, I think Fox still has a chance. He might be traded, but who knows? I think he has a chance to be a leader on that team. He can be kind of Devin Booker-esque if he wants. I know he's a point guard, but he has that mentality to get better and make his team better. The Suns are lucky, well, not lucky, but they went out, they got Chris Paul, right? You're adding veterans, Tristan Thompson. I don't know. That's not a guy. It's like, oh, that's veteran leadership. He's a championship player.
It's a locker room guy.
I wanted Kevin Love too. Like, I wanted Kevin Love, but it wouldn't be that improvement that like you would get with a Chris Paul, which is like a blessing, because a lot of teams, of course, can't get a Chris Paul. But that's what it took to turn the Suns around. It took a Chris Paul to come in here and turn them around and get everyone here. That's what they need. I just don't know who that guy is.
Ben Simmons.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't want to work out, want to record
Perplex,
each other and Nerf ball in it or whatever he does.
Perplex Damage, one of our elite jamsters in the chat, says Buddy will be bought out and go to the Lakers midseason. Yeah, that was kind of that initial report when all the guys got traded to Washington, and all the guys, that's Montrezl Harrell and those guys. The initial reports is where they were being traded up to Sacramento, and the Lakers were going to receive Buddy Hield in response. Buddy Hield is just one of those guys. He was great at the University of Oklahoma. He's a great scorer, but he has a lot of, one, he's not a good defender at all. But again, who is in the NBA? But he's just somebody who I don't know, his inconsistency has been something that has been of note in the past. And they have too many pieces that are alike. And I think that's an issue. And it reminds me of when the Suns had like TJ Warren, and then they drafted Josh Jackson, who played the same exact position, and they wanted to start him, and he was supposed to be the next thing. It's like you just keep drafting the same position over and over. I mean, think about it. It's like De'Aaron Fox. Let's see. They went De'Aaron Fox, then they went Marvin Bagley, and then they went, I'm missing a year because they had Halliburton, and then Davion Mitchell. Maybe there's a year in there I'm missing, but essentially they got like, the same guy over and over again. And I don't get it. But anything else you want to talk about on the Kings?
No, I hope they keep sucking. And that trade for Hield to the Lakers, that'll be a really good trade for the Lakers. I know like the Lakers played the first game, they shot terribly, and people were pointing out no shooters. I'm like, okay, well, say that again when you have to play their asses, because it's gonna suck. I don't care if they can shoot or not. But yeah, they need a shooter. So.
Well, obviously one guy that's going to get a lot of love is Jalen Smith for his performance this evening. I mean, ends the night. You look at, statistically, and again, I know it's preseason, but statistically, 13 points to both him and Landry Shamet had 13 points to lead all Suns scores, 11 rebounds, 13-11 for Stix, 1 for 6 from deep, which drives me crazy, but 5 for 12 from overall. So essentially, he shot 4 for 6 inside the 3-point line. Yeah, and I gotta say, the notes that I wrote down on him this evening were essentially, what? I really like this guy. I like what I saw. He had hustle. He had aggressiveness. At first, he wasn't settling for threes. What was interesting is he looked bigger to me, less sticky, if you will. And maybe it's because he was wearing like, it was like less sticky. I don't know. But there was one play where he did a back down, lost the dribble, and then he turned around and shot a 13-footer and just looked so nice. And he really picked up where he left off in the summer league. And that's something that we've talked about on previous podcasts. These little career mile markers that Jalen Smith has to hit in an effort to become an impact player in the NBA is, play well in summer league, check mark. Okay, play well in the preseason. And after one game, check mark. And that's going to perhaps open up more opportunity for us to see him in the regular season, if he's making an impact like this.
Yeah, when I was listening to it, I just heard like, oh, a miss three. I'm like, okay, maybe he'll get back into the game. It's just probably the jitters too, because this guy, I mean, now he's playing with the Suns team. There's a lot of places where, not a lot of places, but there might be one place he might end up if he's traded. There's probably a lot of things going on in his head, so he wants to improve. He wants to show that he can stay. He sounded like he was hustling. He sounded like you said, that put back shot that went and looked good was really nice. But it sounded like he finished the game strong. And that's all you
Yes.
can ask from him is just to hustle, do other things on the court to help your teammates when you can't get a 3 to go down. He got to 6 rebounds early, which was nice. And I heard he had a really nice block on Holmes, which I didn't get to
Yes.
see.
Yes.
So things like that, it's like, okay, that's out of the box. Those are things that we kind of thought maybe he can bring to the Suns as a player, but now it's just like we got to see it on the court. So the more and more he tries, like Mikal Bridges and like a Cameron Johnson, where they're just trying new things on the court, things that they think they can improve on, and things that they know they can do in practice, that they know they can do against maybe lesser competition, to get it in the game, just to work on it that way. That's what he needs to do to really get himself some minutes. So I'm looking forward to, I mean, there's not really a lot in the rest of the preseason to look forward to, but he's a guy that you just got to keep your eyes on, just like Summer League.
Absolutely. And then that's what makes watching these preseason games worthwhile, is seeing the development of Stix. And we talked about it before. And a performance like this is going to build confidence for him. And that's the most valuable tool that you can have as a young player in the NBA, is a sense of confidence. And his teammates are going to be like, they'll be showing him the box score, and they'll be giving him a little bit of shit on the plane ride home from Sacramento. And, they'll be just making him feel included, making him feel confident in the performance that he put forth for this team, even if it is in a preseason losing effort. And I think that, again, as we progress, it's something that we need to keep our eyes on, is if there's progression or regression. And, the thing is to remember on that, if there is any air quote regression, it's not going to be much, because he might have an off night and we can't, Stix sucks, man. He only had 3 points. He shot, 6 threes. He had 2 rebounds. He was horrible tonight. It's like, no, he had an off night. And that's just one thing I have to remind everybody, that it's like, when that happens, if that happens in the preseason, don't jump off a bridge. It's going to be okay. So I really think that tonight was a positive night in the right direction for Jalen Smith. And that's what we've wanted, essentially, this entire time, is just to see him have an opportunity. And if you remember last season in the preseason, he had a couple, really, I wouldn't say great games, but he had some great possessions. And again, those are the building blocks to get this guy some confidence. So when the regular season starts, you can get him some minutes. Because guess what? You probably don't want JaVale McGee playing every night behind DeAndre Ayton. You want to give him a night off here and there. He is a guy who's 33 years old. He's won multiple championships. He's a great guy for the bench. And he'll be the number one guy cheering on Stix if he's having just a nice performance, or even getting any minutes while he's sitting on the bench. And I want to see that for Stix.
And where's he on the court? Is he looking comfortable out there? That was one big thing last year in the beginning of the year, where he didn't look comfortable, which is expected from a rookie. Now he kind of does, right? Now he's kind of figuring out, if the threes aren't going down, he's having a hard time maybe boxing somebody out. As long as you can see him improving to where to be on the court, then that's good. And that might have something to do with boxing out if you're not in the right spot. So that's probably a bad example. But I mean, if he's just not getting going on offense, which you don't want to expect a lot from him there, you just want the size, you want the smarts, you want someone to come in not to cost your team like a 10-point lead, when he has to come in and kind of like carry that with the second team. So maybe we're getting that, and I hope to God we are, because they picked him high, and I think they see the potential. It's just whether or not he wants to work on it in these regular season games coming up, if he's still a Sun.
And I think that he is, and I think that he will. I mean, he's in a culture that says everything, you're going to earn everything, but you're going to have fun doing so as well. DeLeon, whatever. I'm sorry, I mess up names. Stix just said, since my whole basketball career, I've been a 5. I know how 5s move. And he was moving like a 5 in this game. He was hustling. He was moving up and down the court. He was backing guys down. He was blocking shots. He was looking more like a 5 and less like a guy who was just hanging out by the 3-point line all night. Granted, he did shoot those 6 3-pointers, and that's something I want to see less of, obviously, from him. I want to see him focus on the interior game, but that's the way that he needs to play. So
good. Yeah, nice to hear, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wish I could have watched.
Yeah, it was fun illegally streaming it. All right, next segment.
Jam star of the game.
Listen here, I know that this is only a preseason game, and I think I should also remind you that if you are watching, hit the thumbs up button, and if you're listening, subscribe, rate, and review. And again, if you are watching, let us know who your jam star of the game is. So we'll give out a jam star of the game, even though it's a preseason game. Matthew, who
Yeah.
you got?
Oh, it's got to be Shamet. Whoever had the most notes about on this. So Shamet wins by 2 lines. Just because I kept hearing his name, and it sounded like he just fit already. He sounded like, no, I'm not gonna say like a missing piece, but he just sounded like maybe he is a missing piece. Maybe he is a missing piece behind Booker that John always wanted.
Yes.
He comes out. A lot of people are saying, he might be one of the favorite sons going this year. You always got to pick the wild card, the guy that's, not the star, but that kind of holds his own in the second unit. And it might be him, because from what I was hearing, just getting the players involved and what else he can do with shooting the ball, it's going to be something special, I think, with him. He's a son. He's ready to fill
Yes.
that role behind Booker, play point guard, whatever he needs to do to get this team more wins.
Well, it's play 2 guard. That's the beautiful thing about it. And I think that's why he is going to be a very valuable asset for the Phoenix Suns, is because he's going to truly be asked to fill a role that he is unbelievably comfortable with. And yes, he is my jam star of the game as well. As we mentioned, he, tied with Jalen Smith for 13 total points, 5-11 shooting, those 3 assists, 2 rebounds, 2 steals. I just think that, in Brooklyn, he wasn't necessarily used properly because he couldn't be used properly. They kept having injuries, whether it be to James Harden or to Kyrie Irving, where he would get starts, he would get minutes, and he would have to assist in running that team and not get to play like he was essentially trained. Because you got to remember that this is a guy who played for the Los Angeles Clippers his first season with JJ Redick. And he's a guy who is very JJ Redick-esque. And it's funny because in the offseason, that's the guy I wanted the Suns to target. And they did. They just got the younger version of him who's going to last a little bit longer. Didn't JJ Redick just retire?
He might have. I'm not sure, man.
I think he did. But that's what you have in Landry Shamet. And it's something that he showed tonight was his quickness, as you mentioned, his explosive first step, his ability to shoot the 3, his ability to just score in a plethora of different ways that's going to just keep that scoring attack occurring when your number 1 point scorer, Devin Booker, is on the bench. That's everything that I've wanted from the Phoenix Suns for quite some time now. And in the first time that I got to see Landry Shamet play, wearing number 14 for the Phoenix Suns, which is something that, who's the last guy to wear number 14, Matthew?
I think me and NBA 2K15 or something. I used to, because there's no other numbers when you're a point guard. So yeah, it was me.
The last guy to wear number 14 was Czech Diallo, and D'Anthony Melton before him, Josh Gray, Greg Monroe, Ronnie Price, Gerald Green, Luis Scola, Sean Singletary, Antonio McDyess. Yeah, Jeff Hornacek is the one who I always remember wearing it when I was a young lad. But yeah, wearing that number 14, he looked good out there tonight. And so for that reason, he is my jam star of the game. And I think that his contributions moving forward on this team are going to be very, very positive. And I think that we're going to really fall in love with him. So get ready, Jamsters. That's going to happen. The next game for the Phoenix Suns is going to be Wednesday at 3 p.m. I absolutely love what the Phoenix Suns have done. They've moved their game up. So the Phoenix Mercury, who play the Las Vegas Aces in the semifinals, with an opportunity to win that series and go on to the WNBA Finals, they'll be playing that evening at 6. And a lot of people are saying, it's a class act by the Suns. I think it's the only act by the Suns. Like, how could you sit there and be like, no, you play early because we have a preseason game against the Lakers? So I think it's just, again, the camaraderie between the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury is fantastic. Chris Paul bought 500 tickets and left them at will call so people can come down. I wish I was in Phoenix, so I'd actually try to get to go to that game, and I think it'd be fucking lit.
Is it in the arena though, or are they playing offsite somewhere else?
No, I thought they're playing. I thought they're playing in the arena. I thought they're doing double header status.
Are the upgrades done yet? Like, is it 100% done?
Yeah. So I was listening to the Solar Panel with Dave King. Everybody, if you get a chance, make sure you subscribe over there as well. Doing a great job. Him and Zona Sports is his new co-host, and they were talking about that. And essentially, all of the stuff that we'll see is done with construction. It's some stuff underneath the stadium that still needs to be done. Some of the VIP areas and bars underneath the stadium, which we've been to before. But that area is where they still have some construction, but all the seats, all the lighting, everything else is done. So
This is
I
how
think,
you get the WNBA into it, like into people's
yeah.
lives. These players, they need to, and they need to do this because so many people have a hard time going to the games, including
Mhm.
me, and even watching the games, including me, because it's not out there enough. So the way to do it is these players interact, and the Cardinals, the Mercury, and the Suns right now, and screw the Diamondbacks. They're all three of them. Seriously, are like they're all united. It's like a family. They're feeding off of
Yeah.
each other. It
It's
is
Phoenix
insane.
sports, man. It's fantastic. It's such a fun time to be a Phoenix sports fan. And it's so funny because literally like 4 years ago, it was like 2017, the Suns were in last place and had the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. The Cardinals were in last place and had the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. The Arizona Diamondbacks had just traded away Paul Goldschmidt, their franchise player. I mean, it was a depressing time in Phoenix and to be a Phoenix sports fan. And here we are 4 years later, and we have the Phoenix Suns, who are exciting, just went to the NBA Finals and have a fantastic shot at running it back. You got the Arizona Cardinals 4-0, whooping the Rams' ass yesterday with Kyler Murray just making play after play after play. You have the Diamondbacks still suck, and they go and they win on the last game of the season and cost themselves an opportunity at the number one overall pick. And then you got the Mercury, and you got Diana Taurasi out there, the GOAT, who's like my age, and she's scoring like 37 points in a playoff game when people are saying that she's old and done. Like, it's a fun time to be a fan of Phoenix sports. But that being said, that game's going to be on at 3:00 Arizona time, so the game's going to end probably about 5:30. You know, Matthew and I most likely won't have an opportunity to actually watch the game, but we will still go ahead and have a post-game pod on Wednesday, probably about 6 or 7 o'clock, and talk about, you know, what we've heard, take a look at some of the highlights and things of that nature. Because you know what, Jamsters, we're here for you. I'm so excited to do this again, man.
Yeah, me too. But it's so funny. We were talking about watching the Mercury and supporting them. We're like, oh, we'll do our podcast right in the middle of their game.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, we might have to
I
do
don't
it
know what to do.
afterwards. I think we should
might
do it
have
after
to.
the Mercury game. I think we
Should
can
we do
talk.
that?
Absolutely, we should talk about the
All right,
Phoenix
let's do
Suns, and
that.
then we could talk about the Phoenix Mercury too, because I will be watching that game. That's
Yeah,
a good
we
call.
gotta watch that one. Yeah.
No, without a doubt. Real quick on the one last note that I had on this game, I wrote in
Yes,
my
sir.
notes. I wrote, let's see, where's it? Chase and Randall wearing number 4 too soon. That's C4, bro.
Tyson Oh yeah,
No.
Tyson Chandler.
Tyson Chandler, fucking Javon Carter, dude. Jesus Christ.
I couldn't even remember him earlier when we were talking about Shamet, who Shamet replaced. That's how much I already love Shamet. And that's the way and I was so high on Javon Carter. Remember, I
know. It's
it
all you
was
talked
Etuan
about
Moore
last year.
too. That's who I forgot. Yeah. So.
Real quick reminder to everybody out there, the Suns Jam Session Listener Fantasy Basketball League. We're getting ready to ramp that up. Shout out to @Warlord1914 on Twitter. He hit us up and he goes, @Suns Jam, I want to be in the Fantasy Basketball League because, and then he put emojis of Buffalo Burger, apples, and mountains. Because I randomly said those 3 things on the last pod,
that.
and he's in. So if you're interested in being in our fantasy basketball league, hit us up on Twitter @SunsJam and just tell us why. Like a response like that, like, you know, Matthew and I are oddballs. Give us just kind of one of those little like jamster, you know, jabs, and yeah, we'll get you in the league. So far, it's me, Matthew, the reigning champion @So Says Jay from Fanning the Flames, and now @Warlord1914 is in the league. It is on ESPN, and the draft will be happening before the regular season, which starts on the 20th, and we might do a live podcast with the draft going on. I don't know yet. We'll see how that goes.
All right. And honestly, if you leave a comment, just act like it's like a dating site, you know, leave a weird one so it pops out. And like, oh, this guy. Wow. You know, and then also, just really quick, I know we're almost done here, but Alfred Payton actually looked pretty good today, too.
He
a
did.
little bit, right?
Yeah, why didn't we talk about that? And his hair looked
I
good,
don't-
too. Oh, you didn't see it, but his hair's
I
looking
didn't see
good.
it.
Little
Yeah.
grown out, you know, not falling in his
Overlooked
face.
a little bit.
But he was, again, you know, I was talking about earlier, one of the things that I enjoyed watching about this game was the fact that the Suns were willing to just take it to the rack instead of settle for 3-pointers. And Alfred Payton, we know he can't shoot threes, but he was penetrating and kicking and penetrating and trying to, you know, generate offense that way. And again, I like, that's going to be one of the nice things. Again, I don't expect Alfred Payton to get a ton of minutes for the Phoenix Suns. I really don't. With Chris Paul, with the CPs, Chris Paul and Cameron Payne, you're not going to need much from the, you know, EP. But when EP does play, he's going to force the issue. if you have like 5 minutes in the second quarter where you need to get the other team in foul trouble, bring EP in, man. He's going to go right at him because that's what he does. And he'll either generate the contact and get a foul or generate the contact and dish out to somebody who's wide open. Maybe we can hit some threes. Again, the depth on this team is fucking awesome.
So deep.
So deep, bro. So deep, bro. Last question I have before we real quick. Corey Flynn asks, next game on TV. Yes. The next, if I remember correctly, and Matthew, you might be able to correct me on this, but the next game for the Phoenix Suns should be on, I believe it's NBA TV against the Lakers, and then it's on ESPN against the Lakers, and then the last game of the preseason will be on NBA TV as well. So this was the only one that wasn't on Phoenix Suns television this evening.
All right. Well, I might still listen to John Bloom. I kind of liked it. I was listening to it, taking notes, doing a little.
Shout out to Bloomer, man. Like I've asked him a couple times to get on the pod, but it was during the off season. He was like taking some time off, and it's hard to get him on the pod because we do post game pods at the same time he's doing post game stuff. But absolutely love listening to him talk. The energy, the excitement, like you want to run through a wall like after you talk to that guy, and it's just there's no better, outside of Al McCoy, like him and Al McCoy, having those guys call your Phoenix Suns games. It's an honor, Phoenix Suns. I mean, it really is. Because I was listening to the Kings guys tonight because I was streaming the game and they had the radio feed. And I'll tell you this, like they love Halliburton. Anytime that guy did the most pedestrian shit, they were like screaming. They're like, "Oh my God, did you see that pass?"
It's their only hope, man. It's another kind of new hope there, right?
Yeah, it's like Star Wars Episode 4, and I was just thankful in that moment because outside of that, the very bland nature of conversation, you could see one guy trying to set up the other guy, and the other guy, it was just, oh shit, like he didn't. There wasn't good chemistry there from a radio broadcast, and it was kind of annoying. And we should be thankful, Suns fans, for what we get to listen to when we choose to turn on the radio. And I tell you what, like the one issue I have, I would put on the Suns radio broadcast with Al McCoy or John Bloom anytime I could. But the challenge I have, especially having DirecTV at home, is you can't pause the radio. You can pause the TV, but you can't pause the radio. It was like yesterday. You were over at the house. We were watching the Red Zone. I had it up on picture-in-picture. And because the local feed for the Cardinals game is really lagged, I would pause the Red Zone and I synced it up, right? So it was like at the same time whenever they were on the Red Zone channel and on the local feed. And obviously when the Cardinals weren't in the Red Zone, it was showing the Red Zone channel and I was seeing everything else that was going on. But you can't do that with the radio because the radio is so far ahead. It's not like I can pause the radio, wait 20 seconds for it to catch up to the TV and play it at the same time, or I would every time. I can't stand the TNT guys anymore. I can't stand the ESPN guys as far as I can throw them. And I think that I just wish there was a way to like pause the radio to like get caught up on TV and then press play and then listen to Bloomer or listen to Al McCoy call those games, man.
Yeah, we were trying to do that. I think it was the last. I don't think
during the finals
I think it was
we tried.
Game 5, maybe. Yeah, we were trying to do that at your house, and of course you can't do it. But yeah, it's a tough job, and especially when your team is losing, it's the worst. And you just want to hear from your home announcers, and it's almost impossible, man. But there has to be something. There has to be an app, something created to get this done. Because I hear this a lot now. The last 5 years, a lot of fans, they're just sick of it. It's too loud. If your team is losing and the announcer's too loud and too aggressive and happy, it sucks. It makes the game even worse.
Or if they're sitting there just talking about how great the other team is, and typically when we watch national broadcasts, that's what they do. It's like, it was kind of like watching the Cardinals game this week. It was kind of annoying listening to the Cardinals feed whenever we could because all they did was talk about, like, they were pissed that the Cardinals were playing so well. You knew that they did their research all week long, talking to all the Rams, and they had all their notes on the Rams because the Rams were going to kill the Cardinals for the 9th straight time, and they were just going to sit there and have a Rams suck-off fest, and the Cardinals disrupted their plans. The Cardinals came in that. It is, and so they did, like, they're like, there's kind of fucking, it's like they were pissed. And in those moments, I would like to turn off the national feed, turn on the radio, listen to Ron Wolfley call the game. He's like, oh goddamn, that penetration there, it was some good penetration by James Conner for that touchdown. But you can't because it's so far ahead of the TV feed. And I know I'm bitching about something that probably nobody cares.
The 4-0 Cards, dude.
I'm just go Cardinals, baby. I mean, I don't think you can see it. Let's see right there. I got my Cardinals hat sitting down right over there, man.
Beautiful.
Because guess where I'm at? I'm in Spokane, Washington. So you know what that means, right? I'm in Seahawks country. So you know what that means, right? I'm wearing my Cardinals gear.
They're not good anymore, so they don't have more fans.
No, they won this weekend.
No, I know.
I got my Cardinals hat on, and I use my Desert Schools. Let's see here. It's really great for the people listening versus watching. But I got my Desert Schools card right here, and it's the Arizona Cardinals. So I pay with it. People are like, "Oh, Cardinals!" I'm like, "You got 4-0 Cardinals." Or
Well, what are those fans gonna do to you? Were they gonna, like, clip your toenails or something? I don't understand. Like, there's not aggressive fans, are they?
No, not
It's
here.
not like Raiders
Last
fans or
last
anything.
week when I was in Lodi, California, that's San
Yeah.
Francisco 49ers country, and I had a couple comments like, "Oh, Cardinals!" I'm like, yeah, that's 3-0 Cardinals. That's who we are.
You know what? Cowboys Cardinals, second to last game of the year. That's gonna be
Yeah.
a big game because right now those are looking like the two best teams in the NFC.
Right now, yes. I mean, we're not a
Yes,
quarter of
they
the way
are.
through the season because it's 17 games, not 16.
Yeah,
and-
I know.
But at the same time, like I absolutely agree. They
Yeah.
just have so much offense. Your team, the
Yeah, the
Cowboys, are
Cowboys
scary
do,
because they
for
play
sure.
really good defense. The Cardinals' defense is shoddy at times, whereas your defense is consistent. But we both have killer number sevens. Byron Murphy for me and Trayvon Diggs for you. Both those
Yep.
guys can fucking play.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be a hell of a year.
Amen. Well, I think on that note, we've digressed to Cardinals talk. So it's time to wrap things up here on another edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast, the first post-game podcast of the 2021-22 season, albeit a preseason game. Still, it's great to get back in the saddle and do a post-game pod with you, Matthew. This is a reminder to everybody who is listening. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this pod. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. We'll read it right here on the pod. If you're watching along live with us on YouTube, go ahead, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification button. It lets you know when we go live and all that fun stuff. And, you can follow the show at Suns Jam on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can follow me at Darth Voida, and you can follow Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew Lizzie.
And on that note, I am done. So I will see you guys Wednesday evening.
All right, everyone, go home and jump in the saddle with your family.
Take care.